This video will focus on the reform as well as my reflection on the locus of control in regards to students with emotional disturbance. So, one way to reform the locus of control, and it's now being widely recognized and it's being more well renowned and noticed in the education system. And it is important. So when working with these students that are learning disabled and that have that external locus of control, there are a couple of different strategies that could be used to reform the system. So the first one is altering learning contexts. And this is going to benefit those special needs students that have emotional disturbance. They will benefit from a structured environment, a classroom that's more supportive, right? And students that have an internal focus of control, they're going to be benefiting more from an unstructured learning environment. So first thing would be providing a structured, orderly classroom that has a lot of support. Another thing that we could do to reform would be to strengthen internal locus of control. So there's a lot of educators, there's a lot of specialists that believe that the locus of control is fluid. It can change. So by strengthening that internal locus of control in these students that might right now have an external focus could be very beneficial. So techniques are known as attribution training. So students are taught to internalize positive messages, and this will help them kind of have that intuition to have that internal locus of control. So an example of this would be that students would first say out loud to themselves something encouraging. Then they would say it in a whispering voice, and then they could say it silently to themselves in their head. So those are two methods for reform. Now, something else that I found to be very beneficial for these students that tend to have an external locus of control, and especially in one student that has emotional disturbance. At the beginning of the school year, she was certainly blaming everything on anyone, anything but herself. And my classroom was really based with growth mindset. Read a lot about things done by Carol Dweck, and I'll talk about a study in just a moment. But fostering and encouraging that growth mindset, as well as focusing on accountability, has really benefited this student. And something that I was really careful with was with the language that I use. So if a student, maybe they were causing trouble in class, I would say, you made a bad decision. Here's what you did, and because you made a bad decision, this is what's going to happen. And then explain, this is what you should have done, this is what you could do next time. I would typically hold that student after for a couple minutes and discuss with them, this is what you did, this is what you should do, because they might not know how to react. So you need to instill what to do. You didn't do well in the spelling test. Here's what you can do to improve your grade. Here's what you can do better next time. So being very careful with that language, fostering that growth mindset is another strategy that I found to work really well in my classroom. With all my students, but specifically for that student with emotional disturbance. So let's talk about that study done by Carol Dweck, because I really think this has to do with what we're talking about here. And it has to do with praising kids for ability versus effort. And this kind of goes with that growth mindset. So if you have a student that has that external locus of control, perhaps praising them consistently for their effort as opposed to their ability would have a major impact on their academic attainment. And the study here, it was done in 1998 by Carol Dweck, who is a famous psychologist, and Claudia Mueller, and they published their study, which was done on 5th graders. And the 5th graders were taken out of the normal class, they came into a test room, and each student worked on a set of problems that were moderately difficult. And after 4 minutes, the students stopped working, and the researcher scored their answer. However, at this point was when the real experiment began. All of these students were told that they had done well on their problem set. In some cases, that was the only feedback they got. In other cases, though, the researcher would tell the student that they did well, and then they offered praise for the student's ability. Wow, you must be smart at these problems. Other times, the researcher would offer praise for the student's effort. Wow, you must have worked hard at these problems. The students that were praised for their effort, for the rest of the session, was a lot more successful. So this ties in because we want to transform that locus of control. We want students to work hard, right? We want them to be diligent, to have responsibility for themselves. So praising them for their effort will go a long way in improving that academic attainment.